It was December 2nd in the year 1823, during his annual address to Congress, that President James Monroe, our nation's fifth president, proclaims a new U.S. foreign policy initiative that becomes known as the Monroe Doctrine. Primarily the work of Secretary of State John Quincy Adams, the Monroe Doctrine forbade European interference in the American hemisphere, but also asserted U.S. neutrality in regard to future European conflicts. The origins of the Monroe Doctrine stem from attempts by several European powers to reassert their influence in the Americas in the early 1820s. In North America, Russia had attempted to expand its influence in the Alaska Territory, and in Central and South America, the U.S. government feared a Spanish colonial resurgence. Britain, too, was actively seeking a major role in the political and economic future of the Americas, and Adams feared a subservient role for the United States in an Anglo-American alliance. The United States invoked the Monroe Doctrine to defend its increasingly imperialistic role in the Americas in the mid-19th century, but it was not until the Spanish-American War in 1898 that the U.S. declared war against a European power over its interference in the American hemisphere. The isolationist position of the Monroe Doctrine was also a cornerstone of U.S. foreign policy in the 19th century, and it took the two world wars of the 20th century to draw a hesitant America into its new role as a major global power. On December 2nd in the year 1859, militant abolitionist John Brown continues his eternity. In his awesome fight for a just cause, John Brown is charged with treason, murder, and insurrection. John Brown was born in Connecticut in 1800, first became militant in the mid-1850s, when as a leader of the Free State forces in Kansas, he fought pro-slavery settlers in the sharply divided U.S. territory. Achieving only moderate success in this fight against slavery on the Kansas frontier and committing atrocities in the process, Brown settled on a more ambitious plan in 1859. With a group of racially mixed followers, Brown set out to Harper's Ferry in present-day West Virginia, intending to seize the federal arsenal of weapons and retreat to the Appalachian Mountains of Maryland and Virginia, where they would establish an abolitionist republic of liberated enslaved people and abolitionist whites. Their republic hoped to form a guerrilla army to fight slaveholders and ignite uprisings, and its populations would grow exponentially with the influx of liberated and fugitive enslaved people. At Harper's Ferry on October 16th, Brown's well-trained unit was initially successful, capturing key points in the town. But Brown's plans began to deteriorate after his raiders stopped a Baltimore-bound train and then allowed it to pass through. News of the raid spread quickly, and militia companies from Maryland and Virginia arrived the next day. Many of the raiders were captured and others continued their eternity. On October 18th, U.S. Marines commanded by Colonel Robert E. Lee and Lieutenant J.E.B. Stewart, both of whom were destined to become famous Civil War generals, recaptured the arsenal, taking John Brown and several other raiders alive. On November 2nd, Brown was sentenced to death by hanging. On the day of his execution, 16 months before the outbreak of the Civil War, John Brown prophetically wrote, quote, "The crimes of this guilty land will never be purged away, but with blood," unquote. It was December 2nd in the year 1942 that physicist Enrico Fermi produces the first nuclear chain reaction. Enrico Fermi, the Italian-born Nobel Prize-winning physicist, directs and controls the first nuclear chain reaction in his laboratory beneath the bleachers of Stagg Field at the University of Chicago, ushering in the nuclear age. Upon successful completion of the experiment, a coded message was transmitted to President Roosevelt. Quote, "The Italian navigator has landed in the New World." Unquote. Following on England's Sir James Chadwick's discovery of the neutron and the Curie's production of artificial radioactivity, Fermi, a full-time professor of physics at the University of Florence, focused his work on producing radioactivity by manipulating the speed of neutrons derived from radioactive beryllium. Further similar experimentation with other elements, including uranium-92, produced new radioactive substances. Fermi's colleagues believed that he had created a new transuranic element with an atomic number of 93, which is the result of uranium-92 capturing a neutron while under bombardment, thus increasing its atomic weight. Fermi remained skeptical about his discovery, despite the enthusiasm of his fellow physicists. He became a believer in 1938 when he was awarded with the Nobel Prize in Physics for his identification of new radioactive elements. Although travel was restricted for men whose work was deemed vital to national security, Fermi was given permission to leave Italy and go to Sweden to receive his prize. He and his wife, Laura, who was Jewish, never returned. Both feared and despised Mussolini's fascist regime. Fermi immigrated to New York City, Columbia University specifically, where he recreated many of his experiments with Niels Bohr, the Danish-born physicist who suggested the possibility of a nuclear chain reaction. Fermi and others saw the possible military applications of such an explosive power and quickly composed a letter warning President Roosevelt of the perils of a German atomic bomb. The letter was signed and delivered to the president by Albert Einstein on October 11th in 1939. The Manhattan Project, the American program to create its own atomic bomb, was the result. It fell to Fermi to produce the first nuclear chain reaction, without which such a bomb was impossible. He created a jury-rigged laboratory with the necessary equipment, which he called an atomic pile, in a squash court in the basement of Stagg Field at the University of Chicago. With colleagues and other physicists looking on, Fermi produced the first self-sustaining nuclear chain reaction, and the new world of nuclear power was born.